My wife, Irene, is very fit. She likes working out and has a proper exercise regime, etc. She believes that if she feels good, she looks good, and she feels good working out, so who am I to stop her? My brother, Will, spent the latter half of last year going through a messy divorce and now needs a place to stay. Though my brother and I aren't very close, I figured he would only stay with us for a couple weeks until he got back on his feet. Will is a typical gym rat. He's always on a very strict diet, always working out and bragging about his gains. I've worked out with him a few times and he's a little obnoxious. He's always mad at you if you don't work at his pace and is always trying to correct your form. He's a pretty fit and muscular guy, but I don't like to exercise with him. Will has been pushing Irene to work out with him because, according to him, she won't be able to keep up with him. Irene mostly just shrugs him off with a laugh and tells him she would love to work out with him. Irene works out in the mornings, 3 times a week, and then does a run in the evening. But she's been busy this past week and hasn't been able to stick to her usual schedule. Will thinks that she's making excuses because she doesn't want to be embarrassed by him. Again, Irene just laughs him off. About 2 days ago, Irene and Will went on an early morning run. I didn't go with them, but the first thing I heard when Will entered the house was, "The only reason I couldn't keep up with you, Irene, is because you were sweating too much." I found this extremely comical, and kinda just laughed him off. Irene rolled her eyes and went to take a shower, so I thought that the conversation would die. However, Will just kept bringing up my wife's sweat. My wife went to work and he told her to make sure she doesn't sweat through her clothes, or when she called me in the middle of day. He yelled, "Tell the sweaty." I said hi. Of course, the comment aggravated me and I told him to knock it off and stop acting like a child. I thought that was the end of it, but he just kept going. By the end of the day, I was tired of his comments, but Irene seemed rather unfazed by them. When she served him food, he made a comment about her sweating into the food. At this point, I was at my wit's end and I told him to stop acting like a slow, referring to his running pace, loser, and eat his food. Will, of course, got angry, and said the only reason he was going slower than usual was because he was distracted by my wife's unhygienic sweat. Irene looked a bit offended by this, and I told Will that I would kick him out if he made another comment like that. He's been super pissed ever since. I jokingly told this story to a mutual friend and they agreed with Will. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh. I didn't expect this amount of responses. I've decided to kick him out. He will be staying at a nearby hotel now. I met my friend Chuck about 1.5 years ago. We were both part of an online local group for single parents, and eventually met offline with other group parents. I have known Britt since high school. Chuck's wife died of childbirth complications the day their daughter was born, more than 2 years ago. Britt is a few months out of a 9-year relationship. Both of them have expressed wanting to meet other people. And I thought they'd be good for each other because of common interests, and we all have kids of similar ages. 2 days before Christmas, Chuck and Britt went out on their first date. I kept Chuck's daughter at my house so the two could have some more time together without him having to worry about the baby. The plan was for her to spend the night. She's done it before and gets along great with my 3-year-old girl. But Chuck knocked on my door at 11 p.m. to get his daughter. He barely said a word to me and I could tell he had been crying, but he wouldn't tell me what was wrong. The next day, I asked Britt what happened. She said that they had dinner and a couple drinks. Things were going excellent. She said she felt like they had great chemistry and were even getting physical at his house. But he suddenly told her to stop and to leave immediately. She swears that she has no idea what she did wrong and is really hurt by the whole thing. I believe her because she is really sweet and social. I've never seen her do anything to piss anyone off. I tried to talk to Chuck at the same time to get his side of the story and see what went wrong. All he said that he wasn't feeling it and didn't want to discuss it further. I didn't push it, but when I went to wish him a Merry Christmas a day later, I saw he had deleted me from his social media. I texted it to him instead and asked, "You okay?" But no response. I am seriously hurt and don't know what to do. Chuck has become one of my closest friends, and our daughters are the best of friends too. I am really worried that this has something to do with his wife. And I want to apologize if he felt like I was pressuring him to date after her death. At the same time, I don't want to overstep boundaries and bother him when he's having a hard time. It's been over a week and I'm worried / upset. I have always been civil with my half-brother. We were close as kids, but he started to have an attitude at 13 and pretty much stopped being nice, and started messing with my things / making fun of me and doing pranks to annoy me / privacy, was gone with him coming into my room and taking my things. Whenever I complained, my stepmom would normalize his behavior and make excuses. My dad never really grounded him and thought that talking to him will get him to behave better. I'm currently in college. I live in a rented apartment and have car to help me get to the university or other places. The car isn't expensive or fancy at all. I saved up for it 2 years ago. I decided to have Christmas dinner with my family. It's the perfect opportunity to be with family since I haven't seen my dad in a while. I arrived at my dad's house and left my purse and my keys on the kitchen island after my stepmom told me to help with dinner. My half-brother started talking about my car in the kitchen while my stepmom was listening and asked if he could take it for a couple of hours to hang out with friends. I politely told him no. He threw a fit and brought up how I needed to relax and not worry, but my answer was still the same. While we were sitting at the dinner table, my half-brother got up, washed his hands, and I thought he went outside. I got busy talking to my dad, and after I got up to wash my hands, I noticed my car keys weren't there. I went outside to ask him and neither he nor my car were there. I lost it. I started calling his phone, but he hung up on me several times. I was furious. I told my dad I'd call the police if he didn't come back with the car. My stepmom jumped to defend him and said I was being unreasonable to call the police. I called him one last time, then I called the police. My stepmom freaked out when my half-brother got picked up by the police. She told me to go explain the situation to the authorities, otherwise he'd spend the night in jail. But I refused, especially since I still hadn't got my car back. Stepmom yelled that I ruined dinner and that it was no big deal. He was going to return it after borrowing it from me, but he didn't really borrow it, and she heard me say no. I don't know what she told the police, but I didn't give permission to use the car. My stepmom's side of family are mad at me for doing this to my brother and hinted that I don't consider him family. My dad's side of family sided with me, saying he deserved it. My dad said I overreacted and I shouldn't have called the police when he disappeared for 4 hours. I talked to the police about what happened, and I learned later that my stepmom said that her son was allowed to borrow it, and that it was a misunderstanding. I wasn't going to let her continue to lie, but my dad told me to back off and let it go. This really upset me. My half-brother wasn't even berated the way I was by the family. I met my husband 6 years ago when we both had just graduated college. He was a lovely guy, handsome and very well put together. He loved muscle cars and weightlifting, and I loved everything about him. I fell in love with him instantly and was over the moon when he asked me to marry him. A year into our marriage, I became pregnant with our son and gained about 30 pounds. I was 5 feet 3 inches. 125 pounds before the baby and 155 pounds after the baby. I still fit into the same clothing sizes, so I didn't think I had gained too much weight and that it would come off with breastfeeding and some more exercise. After the baby, my husband started pressuring me to lose the weight. He said that his friends were making comments about how fat I had gotten and that he was not as attracted to me as he was before I had the baby. He gave me an ultimatum that I either would have to lose the 30 pounds in 6 months or he would leave me. I was very upset about the demand, but I didn't want to lose him, so I tried my hardest to lose the weight. Every day for months I would wake up and go to hot yoga for 90 minutes. After I got home from work, I would run or do some bodyweight exercises. I tried to keep my calorie count below 1200 so that I would lose 2 or more lbs per week. The weight slowly but surely started to come off, and I was back down to 130 pounds by the end of the 6 months. My husband was happy and things looked like they would be okay. After I lost the weight, I noticed a shift in the attitude of my husband's friends. Most of them are perfectly nice guys, but a few of them are absolute pieces of shit, the same ones who called me fat. Once I returned to my old weight, these friends started to make comments about me and how sexy I was. I told my husband to make them stop and he said that he would speak with them, but the rude comments never stopped. I channeled all of my frustrations into working out and I lost an additional 15 pounds of body fat and got more toned. This past weekend, my husband's friends were over at the house and one of them grabbed me and tried to grope me. I told my husband, and even though he was angry at his friend, he was still angry at me. My husband said that I was leading his friends on by losing so much weight, and that I was trying to make myself skinny so that I could cheat on him. I was disgusted by this accusation and packed my bags and left for my mom's house. Last night, my husband called me and begged for me to come back home. He says that he knows that he was unfair and that he won't let his friend come over anymore. But I am so tired of dealing with this that I'm not sure I want him back. He's the one that told me to lose weight. But now he's blaming me for being too skinny and I'm afraid he's going to make me develop an eating disorder. But I also still love my husband and it hurts me to be apart from him.